So I've always wondered why, like, people's creative processes when they make music. One, um, one of the big, I'll repeat it again for other viewers, watching and listening. But one of the songs that had a great, like, profound, like, impact on my life and my music journey, um, is "The Spy" by The Doors. I don't know if you've
Okay.
ever
Okay.
listened to it before. Um, that, like, blues and rock, like just, oh, like the organ and the guitar just
Hmm.
go like super well together for me. But that was one of the songs that really, had a big impact on me and really expanded me actually wanting to go listening to music, because I didn't know that there was music like that around.
Hmm.
Like, I had listened to the Doors before, I'd listened to the Beatles, I listened to all these, popular bands, because of what they had on TV and commercials,
Yeah.
but I never went to go looking for them. Like you say that, you said George Crumb is his name.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, that really, like, impacted you. One of the things that really got me into, I guess you could say, like that classical kind of genre
Hmm.
that you're talking about, is was from the I don't know if you ever watched Inglorious Bastards
I have. Yeah.
by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. That's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
Fucking Nazis get what they what they deserve. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I love about Quentin Tarantino also, because he, like, flips everything. And in that movie, you're just thinking, like, well, I kind of know how this is gonna go down. Like, like, this isn't gonna happen. And then
Yeah.
just, oh fuck, you know what I mean? Like, he did it. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? The same thing with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But, like, that, I guess, would I don't know if you'd call it a score, but, like, those songs in that soundtrack. I
Hmm.
believe his name. What's his name? Ennio Morricone or
Okay.
Morricone. I don't know how you spell. Sorry, so sorry, sir. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but those songs really, like, mm, mm,
Hmm.
but really get me, because they go so well with, the movie. Like, they're usually composing to, or like they're creating while watching the film, right? And,
Hmm.
kind of like playing the music towards that. And I always wondered, how do they get, like, what's their creative process? How do they go from, okay, this, now let me start playing for it, or, like, this is what I want to achieve in this, like, in, composing this piece. Like, this is what I want to achieve. This is the sound that I want to listen to, or that I want to, like, hear out, like, get out of it. Like, what's that process like to you? Like, how do you come up with, the things that you do compose or you do write?
Well, for me, um, so it stems firstly from a topic of some sort. For example, let me take my dissertation. I'm very interested in the world around me. I'm very curious about things. I mean, how I always sell myself by saying, if you want me to, I can write you a piece about a pencil. For example, a pencil, you know. But I can do that because my way of composition again is representative. So it's trying to represent things for what they are. Now, there's a couple of layers to this. What I learn and what I input, right? And well, let's keep it to let's keep it simple. What I want out of the piece, right? In terms of what I'm trying to do as in terms of my compositional ideology and what the audience will interpret, right? So I am fully aware that to an extent my way of composing can be seen as a bit hard because again, how do you make somebody think this is a piece about a mushroom? right? So you have to
Mhm.
fall into narrative sometimes, and that sometimes means explaining like, hey, because usually we know when I premiere a piece, sometimes they'll ask you to go up and give like a very short 2 minute talk about what about what you wrote, and then you'll play the piece, right? And sometimes the names themselves of the piece, I'll try to keep it very like, for example, the piece about the mushroom is called psilocybin cubensis. And for those that know what that is, they'll know. But for those that don't know, I mean, they'll ask me. Or in this case, again, I was able to give a 2 minute talk. Anyways, so it starts off with a topic, and then from there, I at least give myself 1 month of pure research to try to understand the topic at hand. In the case of my dissertation, it's going to be about two black holes colliding. So this was a phenomenon that occurred about 2 years ago, and NASA recorded a instance where two black holes collided. And when these two black holes collided, if I remember correctly, they basically sent out gravitational ripples throughout space and time. And I thought that was crazy. I was like, holy hell, you can actually bend the fabric of reality based off the collision of two black holes. And I thought to myself, well, that'd be a cool thing to try to represent in an acoustic world that a mere person of myself can do. I was like, that'd be freaking cool if I can do that.
Mhm.
And so the goal, let's take this in this case, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take more. Well, for this, I'm going to take more than a month of research, and actually, this requires me to talk with an astrophysicist because I don't know anything about cosmology, or I'm not an astrophysicist myself. So I actually was able to work with a professor. I'm not going to mention his name because I haven't gotten permission to say, but he's a professor from University of Michigan, and that is an astrophysicist, and he's going to be willing to work with me to try to help me understand the qualities of black holes, anything in any which way I can, so I can represent them the best I can in an acoustic world, right? So that's going to take months of
Mhm.
research, and then from there I decide what's my instrumentation going to be, what instruments am I going to write for. And in this case, I'm going to be writing for it's going to be a guitar concerto. So basically, in this ensemble, guitar being the main instrument, um then there will be percussion, piano, um a string quintet, just one per part, and maybe a reed quintet, a woodwind quintet, or a saxophone quintet. Still not sure about that section, but that's going to be the overall instrumentation. And then from there, I have to do my due diligence and make sure what the capabilities are of not only the instruments, but what those set of performers are capable of doing. Now, usually in my work, I've been privileged enough to be in an institution where everybody is just crazy good. Like
Mhm.
everybody is good here, from the undergraduate level to the doctoral. And I mean, once you get to the doctoral level, it gets kind of stupid, like how good these people are. Okay, but
Mhm.
for the most part, everybody's freaking good here. Okay,
Yeah.
and so I've never really had any trouble getting people to play what I write, because quite honestly, what I do write is kind of difficult, to the point where it doesn't get second performances because it takes work, right? But I've never been one to really care if it gets second performances. I care about extracting my vision and having people involved that believe in what I'm doing, you know?
What do you mean by second performances?
So it's always said to us, in order to have a successful career as a composer, you need to have multiple performances of your music. Okay, that's
Mm.
how that's what a successful composer is, right? And that's cool. But again, I've never been one to really follow the status quo in anything. And doing me has gotten me where I'm at. So
Mhm.
I don't really care if I get second performances. In honesty, I care to work with individuals that really believe in what I'm doing and like what I'm doing. And if that means they only gets one performance, oh well. At the end of the day, my artistry is purely artistry. I'm not looking to get thousands of like oodles of money out of this. I'm not looking to get, I'm doing it because I love it. And then the teaching will give me stability, you know. But my music, I've never been in this because I'm writing for the sake of making money. I
Mhm.
don't give I don't give a shit, quite frankly. I care more about what I'm trying to say. And if that makes me money, cool. If it doesn't, oh well, I'm still gonna do it regardless, you know. Um, but going back to the process, so it'll start with a couple. usually a month minimum of research, getting to know my instrumentation, the instruments, getting to know the people and their capabilities if I already know that from the get-go. And if I don't, I'll ask him like questions about what they are capable of doing once I found out like okay, I'll start writing the piece, right? And I'll do what's called sketching. Is I'll get all my information first, all my research, right? I'll get all my palettes, all like, basically it's called them all your colors, right? Like an artist. I'll get all my colors, mixed, all that. I'll know all of that. And then from there, I'll start creating sketches. Now, in this case, since I'm working with a bigger ensemble, I don't start off with all the instruments on a score. I'll start off with like a piano reduction. So, or maybe a two piano reduction where it's two pianos, right? Or maybe a four line, like a four lines of staves, or what have you, right? Or I'll do all of that at the same time and use them as I see fit, depending on what I want to achieve, right? So,
Mm.
and then from there, once I get my sketching out of the way, I'll actually start organizing the piece. So meaning like it's kind of like writing a book. So, you know, usually I'm assuming the author doesn't just start writing the damn book, right?
Mm.
They'll have some kind of notes about the plots, maybe climax, characters, maybe they'll have already some character development of where they want the characters. They'll have some kind of outline. That's what I do compositionally too. I'll have an outline which comes in the form of a sketch. Once I have all that set up, I'll start writing the piece. And I do everything by hand. I don't use software. I do everything by paper and pencil. I create my own staves. It's for me, it's just more intimate that way. I don't know what and actually my teacher, Dr. Kennedy, transitioned me to that because I actually was having a problem when I was writing in the past where I was writing too much what's called in the bar. So in order to get out of that, he gave me an exercise where I wrote on paper where I wrote out a stay, but I didn't give myself any like measure lines to metrically place all the music, for example. I just wrote
Mm.
freely and that just opened up. And so ever since then I've only stuck to paper because it's there's no barrier, right? When it comes to like notation software, right? Or like say you're writing in Word, right? In Word in Word, right? You're writing and you're like, how do I indent this on this thing? Or
Yeah.
how do I make this like how do I, you have to go through all these secondary things. And then by the time you do all of that, you might lose your idea. And on paper,
You're putting it exactly how you want,
exactly.
where
And
you
then when I
want, when you want. Yeah.
exactly. And then after I've done that, I then have to figure out how to put it in the software, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I rather have that first thing than try to fiddle around the software and lose my ideas while I'm trying to write it,
Yeah. That makes
right?
sense.
You
That's a
get it.
good, yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
to keep it simple, that's the process. That's my process. Now, again, I don't want to go into detail because I could show you all my sketches, all my notebooks to show you how detailed it gets. But basically, that's the fundamental way I go about any composition. It's always that way.
I like to write,
Yeah.
so the creative process for me with that is like, okay, well, now I've kind of it's cool because I've kind of figured out how to start writing.
Mm,
Because that's my biggest that was my biggest thing is like writer's block, you
sure.
know. Like how do I you get to you're so like set and then you get to one point and then it's just boom.
Mm-hmm.
You just
Mm-hmm.
you don't know where to go, right? Like I don't so like how I got out of that is I mean, before it was kind of writing to write what sounds good, what sounds cool, what I think everybody else would think this sounds cool or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I never put it into like this is what I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I always wrote for other people and what
Mm-hmm.
I think people would like to hear. But when I started, what I started to do is I started to just like, how do I get out of that? Like, how do I get out of being stuck at a wall. And so then I start writing that down.
Mhm.
Right now, I really don't know where to go with this.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
I guess I can probably say that, this character is now at this point in his life, and I mean, maybe what if this happens, and then maybe, you know, but I don't know. I don't know how to, I don't know how to get there. But so I'll start writing my thoughts down, and then it'll lead into something else,
Mhm.
which is very exciting because it's kind of like your at least for me when I start writing, the middle is very hard. The middle is very hard for me. I know my starting point and I know how I want to end it. But where I lose track and kind of lose like my thought process in the middle is explaining what happens, the events that happen in the middle. I know what events lead up to it, but those events that aren't leading up to it, but that are only part of the story.
Mhm.
Is there a certain thing that you do when you get stuck in the middle of, maybe writing a piece? Like, and what is something that you would do maybe for inspiration to get yourself out of, that,
Mhm.
that low
Yeah, yeah.
point, I guess. Not low point, but
But that block, that creative block that you
yeah.
have. I'm trying to like look into my experiences right now. I'm trying to remember. So I think, because quite frankly, I don't have many of those instances because my everything is so well planned out that
Mm,
everything like basically writes itself at one point. You know, but when I do get into a point where I don't know how to organize my thoughts or like the material that I do have, I'm like, well, how can I make it make sense, right? How can I organize it in a way where it'll make sense to the where it's where it is, right? And if I do have that block, I'll recall my most recent experience which was quite a long time ago actually. Um, if I'm in a point where I have like a block, I'll do a couple things. One is I'll get up and leave, go do something else.
mhm,
I'll do
mhm,
something else, completely forget about what I was doing, right? And I say that, but to be honest, I'm still thinking about it. Like it's in my head. I mean, it's always in my head. I'm always thinking about what I mean. Hell, I'm right now. I'm currently in a whole like journey of research right now, and even when I'm researching, I'm still thinking about what I'm gonna do for my dissertation. Like because I mean that's my main emphasis is that writing. So it's always in my thoughts, right? It's always a real even when I'm at work, I'll be like I'll start talking to my coworker like about stuff and he'll just listen to me and he has no idea what the hell I'm talking about, but he'll just listen to me and that helps me, right? So I guess
yeah.
those are a couple things. I'll walk out, try not to think about it, also think about it, do something else. I'll go like smoke a cigar, I'll go to the lake. I'm fortunate to have a lake close by to me. I'll go I'll grab a beer maybe somewhere. I'll call a friend. Or two, I'll improvise on the piano. I'll just start noodling around. Like no intent, no nothing serious, just messing around on the piano. Okay? It might not even be related to the piece at all. I'll just gradually improvise, right? Or I'll excuse me. I'll look at like my other material that I have in my past, like in the previous like I'll basically relook at my material and just think about it a little bit more, right? Or I'll also do this thing where I'll basically start inputting what I do have, like, and I'm happy with into the software, you know?
Mhm.
So those
You
are a
know,
couple things that help me navigate my thought process. And some of them are connected to try and figure out what comes next. And some of them are indirectly connected to that, you know? Like, I
mhm,
mean, so those are a couple ways I try to avoid or try to overcome that block. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I just have to leave it and just come back tomorrow. you
Mm-hmm.
know? And sometimes same thing happens with tomorrow, then the next day, then the next day, then the next day. I had this. Well, actually, I wrote this string quartet, right? So it was basically violin, two violins, cello, viola, and cello, right? So it was a commission by a quartet called the Eries Quartet. And it was performed recently. I needed 3 more minutes of music,
Mm.
and the due date was like a week away. 3 minutes of music. It takes me a while to get a minute, just a minute of music. Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Okay.
That's a lot of time.
And I was like, fuck, what do I do? Like because at this point I had no sketches for this at all. I had no sketches. Um, but I also kind of purposely did that to myself, by the way. And here's and this is the reason why. So in this piece, I was attempting to portray what happens to the brain during the process of a person passing away, and what happens to the brain after after the person has passed away. So I was trying to depict that, and I had all these kind of charts depicting the theta, alpha, beta, gamma waves of the brain, the the certain activity involved with all those waves, and then the last movement of this piece was entitled Nirvana, and Nirvana is basically not the band Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't in my headspace when I decided for this title, but basically this scenario of pure etherealness, like what I believe to be comes after death. You know,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of all the scientific notions of what happens to the brain, like all that scientific stuff was reserved for the basically 75% of the piece, right? But then the last piece, I had no idea. I'm like, how do I use all this data to create this sense of etherealness, right? And I had no idea. So what I decided was turn on my piano, right? Opened up Logic Pro, which is a recording software, and I just recorded myself. And I looked at my score, which what I already had written, and I thought to myself, okay, Nirvana, Nirvana, Nirvana. What does that mean to me? Nirvana, Nirvana. And I just got on the piano and I was like, this is what Nirvana sounds like to me. And I just improvised. 3 minutes of music. I needed 3 minutes of music. I improvised.
Mm-hmm.
I kept it all. I did not make any change to it. I kept it the way I improvised. And it's probably the most beautiful 3 minutes out of the whole music, out of the whole, I think of the piece is like 15 minutes. The most, I mean, and it's funny because where it was premiered, trip out on this. The guy that was running the event, his wife was the person that was basically she was in charge of the organization, which is who hired me
Mm-hmm.
and the quartet, right? And the wife passed away recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so weird that the piece was exactly
Mm-hmm.
about that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, you
And
didn't know that
I
his
didn't
his
know.
wife had
I
passed.
didn't know.
Yeah.
And I showed up
Mm-hmm.
that day and that's when I knew like his wife had passed. And it's funny because when I wrote that piece, it was in relation to that kind of scenario, that
Yeah.
feeling you get, like if you had a loved one, like what it would feel to
Mm-hmm.
lose them and what you would want them to feel if there is something else beyond this life, what you would want them to feel. And I mean, the piece did its job when there's people in the audience just crying, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that I was able to negotiate that unintentionally, right, for this event, like and I mean I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but that's a kind of interesting power, the indirectness or that thought process of the event, and all that. Like I had no idea, but just me being human and disregarding all the scientific notions in which I usually which I usually go about my own work, right? That's the biggest thing. I try to leave out as much as my interpretation as possible, because it's for me it's easy to write about what I'm feeling, but what's hard is trying to represent what's already existing, that's not connected to you. That's the biggest challenge. But it was interesting that it worked out that way, that I had 3 minutes of music, didn't know what to do, but I gave myself a scenario. I give myself a certain image, something that what a film composer would do actually. They'll have a scene and they'll try to write based off that scene what they're feeling, how to enhance that scene. And that's what I did. I
Mhm.
wrote those 3 minutes of music, and it was probably the best 3 minutes music of that whole piece. And I kind of don't like saying that because I like writing the weird stuff. I like writing
Mhm.
the stuff that's off the beaten path. You know, like I like that stuff,
Mhm.
and that's the stuff that I want people to care more about. But you can't dismiss what the average person listens to, which is what I unintentionally improvised on. You know,
Mhm.
but yeah, so that's kind of like, I mean, to go the big off tangent, but that's kind of what I do to get off to get rid of the writer's block. You know, is all those are the
Mhm.
instances. You know, improvise, walk out, go have a cigar, go have a drink, go talk with a friend on the phone, um, look at past material, edit the current material that I have, put it in annotation software. Those are a couple things that I do. You know.
Mm. That's amazing. Yeah, like, and you don't think about those things that, that music, it's crazy, like the different like you said, the emotions that they can give you. There was a time, I think it might have been, I think it was a Christmas, either the first Christmas or the second Christmas after my grandpa had passed away. My grandpa is like my tata, like he was a huge influence in my life. He taught me how to be a good person,
Yeah.
and he taught
Yeah.
me to he always taught me to look at it in their perspective.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, but he did it indirectly. He didn't really tell me like, "Oh, mijo, you have to look at it in there." But like he would tell me, "How would you feel if?"
He
You know
would
what I
present he
mean?
would
Like,
present to you with thoughts and let
yes,
your own
like
judgment guide you.
yeah, or like, yeah, he would like, "What do you think?" He would always like ask us questions as, "Why do you think that is?" And then he'll go into explain. Like one of the things that he would do is my grandpa was a man of God.
Mhm.
Anytime, anytime that you the one thing I guess that, the like in Christianity that they believe is you will go to heaven because of like you tried to, like, one of the things that will get you there is you giving the message. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And not being afraid to give that message or to try to teach others about God,
Mhm.
because it says that every person in this world has a chance to, to accept, God or whatever, and in Christianity. Um, so he would do that to no matter who. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So that gave me also, some inspiration as to like, I mean, he's not afraid to speak to anybody, and he shouldn't be, because he's only, trying to be like good with that person. Of course, he had his flaws. My grandpa wasn't a perfect, my tata wasn't perfect at all.
Mhm.
But, he gave me like, he was very big and influential on my life. So one of the like music, like one of the forms of music that he would show us was like oldies, right? Like the
Mhm.
stuff that he grew up. And one of those songs was like stop in the name of love before you break my heart. You know what I mean? And that was one of the songs,
Yeah.
like back in the day. And so it was a little bit after, he had passed away. We were driving on our way from Brawley to El Centro, and just this song pops up, and I just lose it. Like
Yeah.
I just like I'm not like bawling all crazy because I have my kids in the back, in the back seat,
Yeah.
but like inside I just lose it, and I start crying. I'm crying, and right when that song like pops up, and like Patty's kind of like rubbing me on the shoulder, and you know and kind of like, I mean, she kind of understood why, but that was the song, like growing up, where you think of my tata, and you think of those times where you sang that music, like we sang that music together, like with my aunt and like my uncles, and the record player, and that was just like a greatest hits record that we would
Yeah.
play and stuff, and that that song just went on like through our family, and it's crazy how just that sound like links those sounds link up to your memories from your past.
Mm-hmm.
And um like what like I'm I don't know what the real purpose of music is, but like I guess that it's just to connect everybody. Like it just like for me, music just connects everybody. Like how like in a good way, maybe not in a like in a bad way, maybe not, you know what I mean? But um or maybe so, but it connects us. And all these memories, people share favorite songs, and they have their own memory to them. But I can tell you my favorite song is this, and you can tell me your favorite song is this. It's two it's the same song, but it's two different, you know, like ways of how it impacted these two people, but it's the exact same song.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's I don't know, that's amazing to me. But what do you feel like the ultimate purpose of music is, like in our lives?
I can only say what it is, what the purpose is for me.
Hmm.
Okay. Because obviously everybody has different reasons why they enjoy music, right? I mean, some,
Hmm.
and I mean, and I was about to say some less, probably less profound than others, but I mean that's even that's a bullshit thing to say, because the like the profound nature of music is completely dependent on your own experience, right? And it's not necessarily something that there's an underlying understanding in music, because there's fundamental things about it that we can all take, you know, notice of. For example, we all know what sadness feels like. We all know what happiness feels like. We all know what bitterness feels like. We all know what jealousy feels like. We all know what those fundamental emotions feel like. It's something that's universally understood. At least in my opinion, it is. I mean, psychologists. There's a reason why there's a whole branch of knowledge based on this, right? I mean, there's fundamental things that we can all understand. But the thing is, even though we have that fundamental nature of us, we all have varied experiences to what makes us happy. For example, there was this one time I took this class where there was this position somebody took where they said that their lived experiences is their own, and because of it, we can't necessarily relate to their lived experience. And I thought that was incorrect, because and I gave an example. It's like, so say you're somebody from your family passed away. Say it's your father that passed away, right? But for me, it was my grandfather that passed away. I might not understand what it feels like for my father to have passed away, but I can sure as how know fundamentally what it is to lose a loved one. So because of that,
Hmm.
I can understand your position. Now, your lived experience is completely unique to yourself, because I have not lost my father, but for some reason, I'm still able to understand that. Why is that? Your lived experience is not so unique. It's still, and I want to say this. I'm not saying that to mean it in an offensive way, or to say that, or to undermine what you feel is special to you. What I'm simply
Hmm.
saying is there's a fundamental nature of understanding that occurs within all of us. Okay, and within that fundamental nature of understanding, there's varied experiences, but being that those are varied experiences does not necessitate that we cannot understand each other at some level. So when I told this person in the class, I told him, I was like, well, I don't know how it feels to lose, for you to have, for example, and there was a person that was lesbian, for example, they were lesbian, and they're like, well, you can't understand what it feels like to love another woman. I'm like, no, I can't, because I'm not gay myself. I don't know what it is to understand liking another man, but I can tell you what love is, and I'm pretty sure what you sense in love fundamentally is the same with the way I feel it. It's just that it happens to be that it's from the same sex in your case, you know. So what I'm
Hmm.
trying to get at is that, at least in an overall view, the purpose of music is not to necessarily share a universal, how can I say this? Not to necessarily share, is to show the variation into why we listen to what we listen to, but come to realize that within that variation, we still kind of fundamentally have this connection with each other. And I think music does that the best. Is that when you hear a sad song, right? Your interpretation of what sad is might be a bit different, right? It might be different. You so for example, say I hear a ballad, right? But I it makes me and let's say the ballad's about love, right? And if they're talking about like some, some kind of, you broke up with my girlfriend, my wife, whatever the hell it is, and I have a loved one, right? And this other person that's hearing the same song doesn't have a loved one. I could be like, fuck, that would suck if this person that I love just like, wasn't in my life anymore. I don't know what I
Mm,
would feel. I don't know what that would feel like. But this other person over here did lose the person that they love. So they're feeling that. But the sadness is different, but the underlying emotion of sadness is still understood. But the experience is
mhm,
just a bit different. But fundamentally, it's the same. It's the same. You know. So I think music allows us to, in that kind of universal sense, to understand ourselves at the most fundamental, basic level of human existence. You know, and everything else is
mhm.
just added experience on top of that. Everybody's unique lived experience. You know. Now for me, speak on my own terms, for me that thought process has changed quite drastically. For me, I think music is the best vehicle for presenting the outside world, because again, going back to my initial statement, if language is deemed to be ambiguous and doesn't really describe anything of the world really, because it's all purely symbolic, right? Music in the same way, if we were to deem it to be a language, right? Because there's some people that say that music is not a language. There's some people that say that it is a language. I still haven't jumped. I haven't really dove or dived into that philosophical debate yet. But I mean, if we were to accept the notion that music is a universal language or a language alone, why not use it to explain the world and then to use those fundamental understandings of human feeling to try to portray it in a different perspective. So for me, it's used as a conduit of trying to present the outside world in the best way, or the way I know how to do it, how to do it the best. So for me, that's what
Mhm.
music serves, is my purpose, is trying to present things not for what they are, or not for what people think they are, but for what they actually are, their actual form, their actual essence. And again, I'll leave it at that, because that is a big philosophical debate that it would legit take like hours more of this conversation. And I have had that talk with some other of my colleagues, and we come to disagreements about what that means. But for me, my belief is that now I still need to develop some more arguments to help my case, right? But I'm a firm believer that music or let's not even say music, frequency alone can describe so many things that aren't describable. you know Not just music, but the formation of the frequencies in which we would choose to create with. And I think for me, that's what's special about music, or that's at least the purpose for me, at least for my own personal endeavors.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, for joining us
Of course.
and for having this amazing conversation about music. It was really great to be able to, pick your brain. And is there anything that you want to promote or anything like that? Any music you got coming out soon or anything you have up?
So you can definitely follow me on SoundCloud and Instagram. So I mean, Instagram is probably the thing I use the most. So it's Sketch Jeremy. So ESQUERJEREMY, And then the SoundCloud is basically the same thing, just first name, last name, JEREMYESQUER. I also have a website. It's www.jeremyesquer.com. No capitalization whatsoever. And that's pretty much it. In terms of premieres, I don't well, I will say be expecting I wrote some music for this show that's gonna air on PBS sometime later this year. So I'll be
Holy
posting that.
shit! Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Oh, nice.
yeah,
What
so
is that?
so basically the show is called I'm probably gonna ruin I'm probably gonna mess up the title because I wrote the music quite a long time ago, but I think the title of the TV show is called Songs About Buildings and Mood. So basically this guy goes to different states and basically looks at historical buildings or buildings in general that you know have some kind of appeal, and he hires performers and composers to write music based off what they feel about the building. And the building that I was given is it's pretty actually a pretty well known place. It's called the Cranbrook Art Museum, and they also have an art school there that's pretty well known. It's based in Michigan, and I had the privilege to be able to write about. I specifically chose the architecture and some of the lore or not the lore, but their model that they have there. So that should be coming out. What are we in July? Allegedly sometime soon. I don't know when, but I'll post it once it gets posted. Yeah,
Awesome. Well,
sir.
thank you again, sir, for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Mikey's Untitled Music Show on Instagram. We'll have all the links below. And again, you know, just going through this musical journey with me and my family, and it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be a great time. So with that, guys, always be safe, be great, have a great one. We'll see you in
All
the
right.
next one.
See ya.